When do you realize a relationship is over? Sometimes it's in the silence. Other times it's in the single sentence a man, who you've spent years living for, says as he packs his golf clubs into his suitcase right in front of you. That morning, as I stood at the breakfast table I had prepared for Lucas, my hand was trembling with the fork. In honor of our 8-year marriage, I made his favorite breakfast: delicately prepared eggs Benedict, freshly squeezed orange juice, and the Belgian-style heart-shaped waffles he'd loved since childhood. All of this was meant to kick off the surprise Maldives vacation I had planned for him. It had taken me 18 months, saving every penny, to make this dream a reality. For him. For us. But that day, as we were on the way to the airport, Lucas turned to me and casually said, as if he was talking about the weather, "By the way, Mia's coming with us. She needs a little rest. She's been stuck at that boring job." Mia. His new girlfriend. The blonde one who works at the same office and is about to go to law school. His mother, Ingrid, sitting in the front seat, curved her lips in a smirk. "Sweetheart, you're not surprised, are you? Someone like Lucas can't stick around with a woman like you, who's going nowhere." She adjusted her glasses as if picturing the tropical selfie they were about to take. Time stopped. All the air inside me deflated. As the hum of the car engine echoed in my ears, even the suitcase I was holding betrayed me. Inside it, carefully planned surprises for the Maldives vacation with Lucas, the special reservation file with his name written on it. It was all going to be wasted, wasn't it? No. What they didn't know yet was this. I, Alina Meyer, don't stay silent. I just speak differently. With planning. With detail. And with the most elegant form of revenge. That morning, Lucas, Mia, and Ingrid thought they left me behind, laughing. But the night before, I had packed not just a bikini in that suitcase, but also a decision. The vacation plan had changed. Yes, there was still a vacation, but the destination had changed. Instead of luxurious Maldives bungalows with glass floors, there was now an old Soviet research camp in North Siberia, one of the most isolated places in the world. A cold stone building, marketed as an eco-retreat, rising next to a stinky, frozen garbage dump, a place that actually hosted ghosts. I told them it was a natural detox experience. Lucas had signed all the papers. Of course, without reading them. He was the type of guy who signed everything I put in front of him. He had never cared for any detail because there was always someone else taking care of it for him. That person had been me. Not anymore. Being left in the middle of the road wasn't going to be as easy as they thought. I had invested my years, my self-confidence, and my patience into this vacation, but all I got in return was betrayal. It was time to return to my investment, and this was just the beginning. When that car was parked at the side, what I had left wasn't just my trembling suitcase. It was the weight of a life in which I had hidden every dream, every ounce of patience, and every silence for 8 years. As Lucas's mother, Ingrid, gracefully placed her suitcase on top of mine, her eyes seemed to say, "You were just a transition. Now the real game begins." But I wasn't a transition. I was the foundation. And they would realize this too late. Instead of turning back, I walked towards the terminal. No one asked me, "What are you doing?" Because a woman walking without tears, dressed neatly and with makeup on, wasn't news to anyone. But inside me, a storm was brewing. And this storm would destroy everything that had been building up for years. When I met Lucas, I was still living my own life. I worked at a big event planning agency in Munich. International conferences, corporate travel, creative solutions in crisis situations. These were my areas of expertise. Organizing hundreds of guests at the same time, from Paris to Dubai, was just a normal day for me. Then Lucas came. With his calm smile, he said, "Why is someone like you still running around so much?" "I'll give you a quieter life." That was when I first paused. For the first time, I thought, maybe I really was tired. I wasn't tired. I was drugged. His quiet life was about dulling my potential. He presented quitting my job as sensible for the marriage. He described the management position offered by my agency in Italy as too much responsibility. He suggested I work for a local company for a while, saying it'll reduce your stress. But the truth was, He wanted me to be less visible, to draw less attention. And under the name of love, I had shrunk willingly, until I saw Mia. At the office Christmas party, that young woman at the coat check. At the time, I didn't even know her name. I just noticed her shoes. They were very expensive. And they belonged to someone very young. I had talked with her, clinked glasses with her. Lucas hadn't introduced me to her, but he had watched her with his eyes. That day, a feeling had started to grow inside me, but I suppressed it with my belief in my safe marriage. Women sometimes know everything, but they choose to ignore it. 2 months later, while doing laundry with Lucas's jacket, I found a long yellow hair. My hair was ash brown at the time. I hadn't dyed it for months. Because I had been saving my money for the Maldives trip. Everything had built up so quietly. The sound of trust slowly breaking could not be heard by anyone. Only one day, the whole structure would crack. And that day, when Mia's name appeared on Lucas's phone, everything fell apart. But I didn't cry. No, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop. I made myself a coffee. I messaged one of my contacts at my old agency. If someone wants to make a last-minute big plan change, am I still in your systems? The reply came within an hour. Always. Tell me how far you want to go and which class. I said, top class, special route, digital detox, solitude, north, very north. In North Siberia, there was a version of an old Soviet research facility that had supposedly been converted into quote, tourism, supposedly to be one with nature. In reality, a ghost town surrounded by industrial waste, with no cell phone signal, and food consisting of canned fish. And Lucas had signed up for this route with his own hands. His I don't read contracts habit had worked in my favor this time. I had confidently placed the changes in the reservation file in front of him. The details he didn't care about were my ammunition. Now I just had to wait. When they boarded the plane, they'd think the real vacation had begun. But a few hours later, the tropical paradise they had imagined as St. Bart's would turn into a cold connection terminal in Moscow, and from there, they'd be taken to an isolated area near a small town called Dixon. The day they thought they had left me at the airport, they had actually opened the door to their own hell. And me? I had taken the first steps of another plan. Mia, the woman Lucas referred to as the love of my life, was excitedly looking at her phone at the check-in counter, sharing a new story on Instagram with the hashtag Maldives mood. In the background, Ingrid mumbled, Lucas, I put my shampoos in my hand luggage, but what was the liquid restriction? You know it. Lucas, glancing at Mia's photos, said, everything's fine. We'll enjoy the vacation. Not one of them had noticed the small but important detail on the tickets. The destination wasn't St. Bart's, but another journey, starting with the code MODKS. Moscow transfer to Dixon, Siberia. Meanwhile, I was in my small kitchen in Munich, making a simple coffee when their boarding notification came through. I had already edited the confirmation emails from the travel agency and sent them to Lucas from my own email. A carefully prepared message. Dear guest, due to the demand for your reservation, we invite you to a nature-immersed vacation experience with our specially crafted digital detox package. Below was the approval document he had signed a few days ago. Any route and content changes have been structured according to guest requests. No refunds or cancellations. The man who once accused me of being too dreamy had signed these documents without reading them. Around 3:20 p.m., when their plane landed in Moscow, the first message came. From Lucas. Short and angry. A Moscow transfer? What's going on? We can't access the reservation. Respond. My response was short and clear. You approved your new route. Nature detox. Remember? Hope you packed your thick coats. Dixon's waiting for you. 3 dots. He writes. Erases. Writes again. Is this a joke? Mia's crying. My mom's having a breakdown. I smiled. This wasn't a joke. This was a silently planned moment of ruin. They had imagined St. Bart's with its glass pools, pillow menus, and oceanfront massages. What awaited them was a stone building heated by a stove, breakfasts of sour fish and cabbage, bells ringing at 5 a.m., and days without Wi-Fi. What's more, Their bags had been left behind in Moscow. Thanks to a special 48-hour delay package, they would have to spend the first 2 days in clothes provided by the facility. Soviet-era worker jumpsuits and thick woolen socks. I started following Mia's social media accounts. On her @MiaGlow account, there was a story. A blurry terminal, Ingrid in the background looking angry, captioned, "What kind of place is this? Lucas, you're not kidding, right?" Now, I was the one smiling, but that was just the surface. What was happening inside me was much bigger. For the first time, I felt free. Lucas's shadow was lifting off me. Ingrid's gaze no longer felt like a weight on my back. And Mia's every step, every beauty, wasn't there to take my place. It was there to explore my boundaries. The cold, ice-cold loneliness they were experiencing was the outward reflection of the frozen silence I had carried inside me for years. I was beginning to rediscover myself. While Lucas, Mia, and Ingrid were desperately searching for a solution at the Moscow terminal, I was packing the first belongings of a new life. A new apartment. Small, but mine. A new job, a new agency. And of course, Miguel, an old colleague, had reached out to me a few months ago for an international position. But back then, I had declined, thinking Lucas wouldn't approve. Now I sent him a new message. "Miguel, if the position is still open, I'm ready now." At the end of this story, a woman wasn't seeking revenge. No, that woman was simply rebirthing herself. She was finding all the pieces of her lost self, melting the frozen silence into something new. And in front of her, there was no longer the old Elena. The 12-hour wait at the Moscow terminal hadn't just physically exhausted them. In the first hours, Lucas had made angry phone calls, tried to reach agency numbers, and even asked his old lawyer friends for help. But no connection could hack into the reservation system. No one could reverse the route, because all of it had been prepared with his signature, his approval. Every document was legal, every one binding, and all of them had passed through my hands. The next morning, when they boarded the transfer flight to Dixon, they still held on to hope that a, quote, solution would be found. Mia was biting her lips, saying, "Maybe it's a VIP camping site." Ingrid pulled out the last bit of her Chanel perfume from her bag and sprayed it on her neck while repeating, "This too shall pass." Lucas, however, was silent. For the first time. Silent. But when they landed in Dixon, the truth hit them right in the face, over that foggy runway. It was minus 27 degrees. When they stepped off the plane, their breath was hanging in the air. The person meeting them was a man in a thick fur coat, holding a handwritten card, Stewart Group, Natural Wildlife Program. Lucas didn't even recognize the name. Because for the first time, their surname was written as part of a group. They were no longer individuals. They were controlled guests. The transfer vehicle wasn't even a minibus. They were put into the back of an old truck. Makeshift wool blankets, metal benches, and walls without windows. Ingrid screamed, "This is outrageous!" in the first 5 minutes. But the driver not speaking English was a great advantage. Her reaction was now just a vapor cloud in the air. After a 2-hour journey, they arrived at the facility. It was a high, gray-walled former research station, single-story buildings made of concrete blocks. A sign at the door. Dixon, Wilderness Immersion, disconnect to reconnect. Cut the connection. Reconnect with yourself. A sentence carved with the cruelest irony. When they entered, what they called the lobby greeted them with a broken radiator, rusty metal lockers, and Soviet-era posters. The receptionist was a drunk man who only said, "Welcome, no refund, no internet." Then he took their passports, handed them thick files, camp rules, cleaning schedules, meal times. Mia's facial expression? Not even an Instagram filter could fix it. Their bags were still nowhere to be found. They were given local clothes, stiff woolen pants, gray tops, camel-colored overalls, and rubber boot-like shoes. Lucas looked at these clothes for the first time and, for the first time, truly broke down. He tried to say something, but no words came out. By the end of the first day, Mia was sitting on a single bunk bed. Her fingers were turning blue. The toilets were shared. Hot water was available only in the mornings, and only for 3 minutes. The food: pickled fish and buckwheat porridge. On the morning of the second day, Mia cried silently. Lucas, for the first time, tried to hold her as she cried, but Mia pulled away. "You knew this," she said. And Lucas, for the first time, questioned himself. Meanwhile, Ingrid was sitting by the stove, holding a half-hearted coffee, murmuring, "Alina couldn't have done this." But at that moment, they all started to understand the truth. This wasn't just a vacation. This was a reckoning. At the same time, in Munich, I had moved into my new apartment. Box by box, memory by memory. Old clothes, pastel dresses bought by Ingrid's insistence, gray suits Lucas had chosen. All of them went into the donation box. I placed my own colors on the shelves. And for the first time, I turned on my own music loudly. A message from Miguel. "We want to consider you for a leadership position in our Asia operations. Trust me, this is your time." I was no longer someone's background decoration. I was at the center of the story. And far away, in the midst of the ice, someone was still mentioning my name, angrily. But me? I only carried my own name now. And that name was synonymous with freedom. The third day in Dixon was the day all the masks fell. The first night walk program at the facility had been organized to give them that much-talked-about authentic living experience. The group, guided by an instructor, observed the wilderness surrounding the dump as they walked along a snow-covered path in the moonlight. But in reality, at the end of the road they walked was a tent area set up between frozen metal barrels. A 3-person tent. No stove, no bedding, just sleeping bags filled with straw. Ingrid refused to enter the tent. Mia, crying, said, "This is no longer a tourist experience." Lucas, however, was left with nothing but silence. His hands were stuffed in his pockets as he stared into the darkness. Maybe, for the first time, he didn't really know what to do. And I. At that moment, in Munich, I was setting up my new work computer, joining an international meeting via Zoom. In the background was a wall I had painted in colors I chose myself, a small sculpture I had kept on the shelf for years, but had never found a place for. Right in front of me was a notebook. It had these words written on it, not to remember, but to start over. That night, Lucas finally sent me a message. First, the classic tone. "You can't keep doing this. People need to know their limits, Alina. This isn't a joke anymore." Then, something else came. For the first time. Did I really deserve this? I stopped. I read the message several times. It wasn't an apology. But for the first time, I felt he was looking into his own mirror. And maybe, for the first time, he encountered a frozen loneliness in that mirror. My response was clear. "If you're thinking about what I've done to you, remember what you did to me over the past 8 years. This is just a reflection." Then I saw Mia's Instagram story. A dull, blurry photo. She was sitting on a blanket spread on the cracked floor of a room, hugging her knees. She had written only one word underneath. Real. I couldn't have imagined a bigger victory. Because this wasn't just a collapse. It was the unraveling of an illusion. Lucas's perfect life, Ingrid's elite circle, Mia's rise story. They were all built on rotten foundations, and the icy solitude of Siberia was bringing them all down. Mia realized she had been dragged into this, quote, strategic relationship. Lucas was facing the consequences of his selfishness. Ingrid was, for the first time, feeling the limits of her power. And me? I had woken up for the first time without an alarm. For the first time, I had stepped onto the balcony with a coffee made for myself. And there, in the light of the winter sun, I picked up my notebook. On the first page, I wrote, "Revenge isn't as angry as you think. Sometimes, revenge begins with just not responding anymore." That day, my lawyer sent me the divorce offer Lucas had sent. The offer was written with the classic male panic. Leave the house to me, don't give me the car, a small compensation offer, but all with one condition. Keep the press away from this matter. Lucas was still worried about his image, but I had already destroyed that image. As I held the offer in my hand, I received a notification on my phone. from my tracking service. Their phones were back online. The brief connection lasted only a few minutes. But in that moment, Mia's last photo appeared. A 3-person bunk bed, concrete walls, flickering light, and underneath, just one word: I want to go back. But it was too late now. Because returning wasn't just about getting on a plane. The last morning in Dixon was so silent. Only 3 sets of footprints were left in the snow: Lucas, Mia, and Ingrid. That arrogant, controlling family portrait was now shattered, scattered, and faded. They had even gotten used to the heavy smell from the dump. Mia's chin was trembling, but she no longer cried. She didn't even have the strength to cry anymore. Ingrid's makeup had long since worn off, replaced by cracked lips, dry skin, and for the first time in her life, a silenced expression. Lucas, he was still looking around, but not with the searching gaze he once had. For the first time, his face held a look of loss. Neither his mother, nor his girlfriend, nor that perfect life he had once lived. None of it mattered at that moment, in that cold. But at that very moment, in Munich, in the first light of a sunny morning, I was looking at myself in the mirror. I hadn't seen myself this clearly in a long time. No makeup on my face, no clothes chosen for someone else's approval. I wore a gray-blue jacket I had sewn myself, my grandmother's silver bracelet on my wrist, and around my neck. Only freedom. That morning, I opened Lucas's last message again. "What did you win, Alina? What are you proud of now?" I didn't reply. There was no need anymore. But as I read that message, the only sentence echoing in my mind was, "I'm proud of myself." Because what I had won in this story wasn't a victory. It was a rebirth. It was a declaration of freedom. Depending on whose eyes you look through, what I went through might have seemed like a tragedy. But through my eyes, this was an awakening. The voice inside me, the woman who had been suppressed, belittled, reshaped for years, was finally speaking. I closed my suitcase. This time, not for someone else. This time, it was a journey for me. Inside, there were documents I needed for work, a few simple clothes, my notebook, and a small note my grandmother had given me a long time ago that said, "Be yourself. You don't have to be anyone else." While waiting in the check-in line at the airport, I watched a woman in front of me frantically searching for her suitcase. That used to be me. The woman trying to do everything perfectly, forgetting her own burdens, while trying to please everyone else. But now, Alina Meyer was living only for herself. When the plane took off, there was no regret left behind in the city. My old home, the gray apartment that had been made to resemble that luxury mansion, those heavy curtains Ingrid had given me as the price of growing up, the neutral tones Lucas had chosen. They all shrank below, like a shadow. They were no longer there, nor was the Alina they had imposed on me. Now, there was just me. During the journey, I opened my notebook. On the first page, it read, "I stayed silent. I swallowed it. I waited. But now I'm writing, and I am the only narrator in this story." I read a message from Miguel. "The event in Singapore has been confirmed. You're leading the first meeting. You brought energy to the team. Are you ready?" I smiled. Ready. More than ever. For those asking what happened at the end of this story, my answer is clear. Lucas? He can't even post stories on Instagram anymore. Mia still complains whenever she finds a connection. Ingrid has been silent ever since she lost her smile. They're still blaming each other in that icy hotel. But this story is no longer theirs. This is my story. My name is Alina. I am not an object. I am not a decoration. I'm not a lucky woman either. I'm a woman who survived, started over, and wrote her own name. And this is not just an ending. This is a real beginning. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every story holds a new female voice, a new beginning. Are you ready to write your own story?